And first of all, I want to start off by saying thank you for the invitation to be here. And when I got that, first thing I thought was, what do I tell you guys in Utah about royalty owners? If you don't know, about 70% of the lower 48 minerals in this country are owned by private individuals. I understand here in Utah that's about flip-flopped. So it's about 67% is owned by state and federal government, and the rest is owned by private individuals. But we've got a story to tell, and actually we're all on the same page. Who we are, I'm going to go into that just a bit here, just as a little commercial about NARO, the National Association of Royalty Owners. And I encourage you to look at my bio and the things so you can know a little about where I come from and what I've done in the past. We're the only national organization that represents royalty owners solely and without compromise. What does that mean? At one of our events, you might see a sponsorship by an oil and gas company. We're happy to cash that check and buy a lunch or a dinner for our folks, but we're not beholden to them. As right now, my Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Colorado chapters all have issues with oil and gas companies in the state houses in those states. But 99% of the time, we're on the same page. And I'm going to get into that a bit more here in just a second. We're celebrating our 35th year of being in business, being an association. Remember the windfall profits tax? There's a lot of gray hair in this room. All right, 1980, our founder was a guy who had kind of gone into semi-retirement. He was counting on his royalty income to offset his Social Security and some other pension benefits. He was being taxed about 70%. And he said, I got to do something about that. And he did. So he formed this organization. We started out as purely an advocacy organization. We have morphed into a true educational organization. We teach our people how to manage their mineral portfolio, what to do with that. Do you need a family LLC? Do you need a family trust? What do you do to protect that asset moving forward when you die? Okay? We always get that call in our office. Grandpa just died. He was cashing royalty checks. There's a shoebox full of papers, we don't know what to do. Well, Grandpa didn't do you a favor. So that's what we do. That's what our association does. And just so you know, if anybody doesn't remember, the Congressional Budget Office predicted what was going to happen with the windfall profits tax, and it was a disaster. Yeah, we lost production, we gained imports, it was a disaster. So go back and do a little research. That's where we started, our founder from Ada, Oklahoma. Our first state chapter was our Oklahoma chapter. Then we had Texas. Our first Rockies chapter, we're going to talk more about that in just a second. Then we had Arkansas, our Appalachia chapter. From that, we have a Pennsylvania chapter, New York, then Louisiana, North Dakota, California. Colorado separated out as a standalone state chapter, and that is now our Rockies chapter. And if you don't know Craig Peterson, he's here. He's the reason I'm here. And Craig, stand up and wave your hand, all right? He's the president of our Rockies chapter, our new Rockies chapter, and he's based here in Utah. We have our association is a 501c6 organization. We do have a foundation, a 501c3. If you've got some spare change, our foundation would love to take that, okay? It's a charitable donation. We accept donations anytime, okay? Just like a church. Our top issues, and this is why I said we're on the same page, and you guys haven't heard any of this stuff so far today, so I think maybe I'm plowing some new ground here, all right? So taxes, percentage depletion, IDCs, do you guys all know about those? Those are very important to this industry. IDCs to most every company that drills wells, percentage depletion to every small operator out there. The bigger operators that produce over 1,000 barrels a day don't get this deduction. There's nobody in the country that is in Washington, D.C. pounding the pavement and pounding on desks about those tax deductions, especially percentage depletion, except our organization. And I spent way too many days in Washington, D.C. the last 7 years because this administration has asked Congress to repeal every oil and gas tax deduction that's on the books. All right? If you didn't know that, that's what the administration has done. We've been successful, and again, read my bio, I'm on a couple of boards of directors where I work with industry groups on these issues, okay? We've been successful in convincing Congress not to do that, not to take those deductions away. What you need to know, however, last year, House Ways and Means Republican Committee Chairman threw out some proposed tax legislation. If we revise the tax code, you hear a lot of talk in Washington, D.C. and in the news about tax reform, right? Okay, House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Kent dropped a piece of proposed legislation that took your deductions away from you, okay? He did leave IDCs, but he took every other oil and gas deduction away from the oil and gas industry and my folks, the royalty owners. The same thing happened in the Senate, and there they took even the IDC deduction away. So if we get into tax reform, and real true tax reform, and you hear that discussion going on, pay attention. You guys, like my folks, can make a difference. I've been in that senator's office when I was introduced, and a young staffer says, "Wait, who are you?" And I repeated myself, and they said, "Tell your people to stop calling us. We get it. This is a Democratic senator." He said, "What's going on?" And she says, his folks have had the phones lit up for the last 2 days on percentage depletion. This was the first time Obama asked to repeal the deduction, okay? And this was Senator Udall, no longer a senator from Colorado, said, "Tell your folks I will not vote to repeal their tax deduction." That's powerful. You guys can do the same thing, okay? And if you're not paying attention, your companies aren't paying attention to these political issues and getting you to make phone calls and send letters and emails, you should be. Write this down, www.ropeco.org. And again, for my bio, I'm the executive vice president of that group. Several companies, our last presenter from Anadarko, they're one of our sponsoring companies. That is purely a political organization to use royalty owners and people in the oil and gas industry as a political tool. We send out action alerts. I'm going to show you one here in a minute. And we send those out to say, on this day, call Congress and do this, okay? And we need you guys to join that list, all right? We don't ask anything of you except give us an email address. If you go to www.ropeco.org, just put in an email address so we can access you politically, okay? Some other top issues, if you don't know about these, municipal takings is huge across the country. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second. Endangered species. This is one when I'm in the east, on the east side of the Mississippi. Folks there really don't know much about that or haven't paid attention to it. Out west, you guys know all about sage grouse, etc. Waters of the U.S. Have you heard about this? Yeah, I see some nods, okay? The easiest way to describe this, it is now an EPA rule, okay? They're not enforcing it yet. They can't because there's some legal battles going on. But basically what it means, if you take a shovel and you dig a ditch with a shovel in your front yard, and during a rain event, the water from that ditch gets into a navigable water of the U.S., you could, okay, this is not definite yet, but you could be under EPA's permit authority. So you would have had to receive a permit from EPA before you dug that ditch in your front yard. That's the God's truth. That's what this rule does. And it's passed, and it's in place, okay? We fought it, we submitted, your industry, we all submitted comments about this, but it still went in place. It's being challenged in the courts, it's being challenged by the Congress. We'll see what happens. Fish and wildlife, rulemaking on wildlife refuge system. Again, a lot of the minerals under the wildlife refuge are privately owned. And our folks that own those want them developed. We testified before a committee last year in Congress, and we'll see where that goes. Policy on exports. It is important to our folks that we're allowed to export our product, that we lease the rights to companies like you guys to produce that product. We would like for it to be sold on the world market. That's what one of the rope action alerts looks like. Comes in an email, okay? And it says, do this. And you can't read all this, I understand. This one is unique. This was when Chairman Camp did his little tax reform piece of junk. Yeah, tell him I said that. We listed all of the Republican members of his committee who opposed him. We told our folks, call them and say thank you. You know how many staffers have called me and said, "Jerry, nobody ever thanks us for anything." So that was powerful. That was a really good thing for us to do. But that's what our action alerts look like. Fracking. Oh my God, goodness. You guys have heard all of these things. And actually that's something I want to do here. Somebody earlier said they want you to learn something. I always want you to learn something when I'm standing up here in front of you. You should be advocates. If you can't tell, I'm kind of the #1 cheerleader for my royalty owners across the country. I love the job. I'm also your cheerleader. But you guys should do the same thing. Educate yourselves on contaminated water, contaminated air, higher rates of cancer. You guys are smart. Go look it up on the web. Energy in Depth is a great place to go. Look at stuff, get the facts. So when you're standing in line at Starbucks, when you're in church, when you're in a grocery store, and you hear somebody talking about these issues, chime in, tell them the truth. I'll tell a story on myself. I'm sitting in an airport a few months ago, and there's this young guy and this woman having a conversation about fracking and how terrible it is. And it's causing earthquakes, and it's causing all this. And I said, would you guys like a geologist's opinion on what you're talking about? They said, sure. Turns out he sells industrial cranes worldwide. She sells wine, okay? They didn't know what they were talking about, except there was a news story that day. So I talked for about 5 minutes. They said, thank you very much. I gave them some reference material. I said, go to these websites, look this up. Educate yourselves. You can do this. I'm no smarter than you guys, okay? You can advocate on behalf of the industry that's putting food on your table, and you should. And my royalty owners should all do the same thing as well, okay? And if you can't read the bottom one there, I blame fracking for the reason I've never purchased a lottery ticket that wins, okay? You think that's funny? About 3 weeks ago, my Louisiana state president sent me a news article. This is the headline from a Louisiana newspaper. Fracking is dumbing down our kids. And it said that young men were leaving high school to take jobs in the oil and gas industry. Therefore, they were becoming dumber because of fracking. Okay? And again, I'm trying to get you guys back on schedule a little bit here, okay? There's Food and Water Watch. If you guys don't know them, it's an environmental organization. They hate you and everything about you and what you do. I've been in meetings like this where they show up, they call me all kinds of nasty names. It's fun. It's fun stuff, okay? More about what they say. Everything about it is terrible if you haven't heard of it. Again, go to their website. See what they say about the industry you work in. Arm yourselves, okay? The Sierra Club, big international environmental organization. Everybody knows about the Sierra Club, right? They hate you guys too. They had Beyond Coal, then they had Beyond Oil. And an organization that I think it was 6 or 7 years ago said that natural gas was the bridge fuel of the future, now has a Beyond Natural Gas. They don't want any fossil fuel development, okay? And one little thing, have you ever heard anybody from the environmental groups talk about the Halliburton loophole of 2005? The Halliburton loophole of 2005 is something made up by environmental organizations, okay? What happened in 2005 is the Energy Policy Act, okay? It was required by Congress, and Congress was required by a federal court in Alabama to address whether hydraulic fracturing, in fact, was an injection process as defined by the Safe Drinking Water Act or not. Turns out, Congress said, no, it's never been in the Safe Drinking Water Act. Fracking is not an injection process. They simply defined something for the court, and that's turned into the Halliburton loophole. Again, you guys need this information. How many people have seen the movie Gasland? Right? Yeah, some of you, all right? Well, the money shot in that movie is a guy in Colorado who can light his water, his faucet on fire, right? Okay? Well, it turns out everybody in the state of Colorado, all the regulatory agencies knew about that guy and his water. It was because when they completed his water well, they went through a coal seam. And as people in the West know, when you go through coal, there's associated gas, okay? No big deal. And again, I'm trying to go fast. This is a group that's called Consumers Energy Alliance, and where they estimate threats to the oil and gas industry from environmental groups and others. Remember when I talked about the municipal problem we had when I listed our top issues, okay? There are municipalities across this country that don't want oil and gas development, and particularly fracking, within their city limits. And Denton, Texas is probably the poster child for that. The citizens there last year voted to outlaw it. There are 270 producing wells within the city limits, all right? People get checks for those wells. Companies have been operating there for decades. The citizens, actually it was students at North Texas State University that actually swamped the polls and got the ban put in place. However, the courts have overturned it. And the state of Texas, Oklahoma have both put state laws into place that said the state laws supersede local governments, so on and on. But just so you know, Mansfield, Texas, Oklahoma, Stillwater, Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, they all had assaults at the city council meetings to outlaw or ban fracking, or moratoriums on it, et cetera, et cetera. New Mexico, Moore County, the entire county, the county commissioners there imposed a moratorium. The courts threw it out and said you can't do that. Louisiana, Tammany Parish, Louisiana, Pennsylvania, it goes on and on, Ohio. Colorado was ground zero last year. They're already saying next year for the general election in 2016, they hope to have a statewide ban on fracking or development. You just equate the two, right? You guys know. If you can't frack, you can't drill oil and gas wells today. An outright ban on the ballot. So a statewide ban may be on the ballot next year in Colorado, okay? So if you think it can't happen here, it's pretty darn close. Before I get into that, I'm going to tell one more story about myself and the kind of cheerleader that I've been. And not necessarily do I want you to go to this extreme, but kind of what I do. Last year I was invited to give a talk in Houston at this luncheon thing. So I showed up the night before to have a reception and a dinner, and as I kind of want to do, found myself late in the evening sitting at the bar in the lobby of the place having an adult beverage. A guy comes and sits next to me, and he's got a badge on for the conference. We strike up a conversation, and when he hears that I'm the executive director for the National Association of Royalty Owners, he starts in about what a sorry lot I work for. And I told him he needed to stop that, and he shouldn't say those things. And I told him about specifically about some of my folks. How about my 84-year-old guy that grew up in a sod house in the prairies of North Dakota? Doesn't deserve a thing. I got to the point, he made me so mad. I said, you need to shut up or I'm going to punch you in the head. He didn't shut up. So I stood up in a very intimidating pose. This group, by the way, were CPAs and lawyers, so I thought I probably could take it. But anyway, so I stand up. He gets his cell phone. He acted like he dialed 911. I don't know if he did or not. He said, I'm at the so-and-so lobby, sitting at the bar, and a guy's going to punch me in the head. I said, no, I'm not. I excused myself and I went to bed. The next day at lunch, a group like this, I didn't find him. But I told the story anyway, and I keep telling that story because it's a good story to tell. And we're going to talk more about that at the very end of this. Okay, I'm shifting gears on you. Again, something to arm yourselves with, something that you need to know, and you can have in your back pocket when you ever hear anybody talk bad about oil and gas or fossil fuels. Generating electricity in this country, the #1 source, and this is from the Energy Information Administration, EIA.gov, okay? It's a government agency that collects information. Go there, they're full of good stuff. These numbers are from 2012. Coal was #1. April of this year, natural gas surpassed coal for the #1 source for generating electricity, okay? I'll show you what that means. In the state of New York, the #1 source for generating electricity is natural gas. You can't get a gas well permitted in the state of New York. If there's a valve somewhere to shut it off and make them hot in the summer and cold in the winter, I'll turn the valve myself. I'd be happy. Bunch of hypocrites. Bunch of hypocrites. It just makes me crazy. California, the #1 source for generating electricity is natural gas. All right. We heard something earlier today. Governor talked about Governor Brown. Actually, he was on the right side yesterday. In the State House in Sacramento, they voted down some potential bad legislation for development in California. But their #1 source is natural gas. Texas, the #1 source is natural gas. About 4 years ago when I first started doing this, coal was the #1 source in Texas for generating electricity, okay? Now let's look at total fuel usage. Again, this is all at a government website. You guys can arm yourselves with this stuff, all right? We hear a lot of talk about renewables. I love renewables, but they won't solve our problems, okay? Of our total energy picture, this is not electricity, total energy, okay? 11% is renewables. Of that, what is it? 17% of the 11% is wind, about 1% or so is solar. So when you hear a politician stand up and say, we're just going to go to renewables. We'll put up windmills and solar panels. You're not going to get there. You can't do this. You can't be in this building relying on windmills and solar panels, okay? And again, if you want to know the real story, this is probably about 6 months old. Technology advances. But if you want to replace 1,000 megawatts per hour electric generating plant that runs on fossil fuels or on nukes, all right? Cut to the bottom there of that first paragraph. 240,000 acres, 9,600 to 11,000 windmills, okay? If you're going to replace that same one plant with solar panels, you need 31.25 square miles. Those are the facts with today's technology. Again, I'm not opposed. My folks aren't opposed. I've got people in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas that are cashing royalty checks every time that turbine turns around. It's a great thing, okay? But it can't replace what we have today. And so when you hear people talk about that, they're either lying to you or they don't know what they're talking about. Again, this is stuff you guys can go find out. You guys all got something about our national conference in your little goodie bags today. Our registration and the room rate has been extended to next week, the 17th. So come see us in Vegas, all right? A good time will be had by all. I was asked to announce that our Utah and Rocky Mountain royalty owners, when the events today end at 4:30 or 5 o'clock or whatever, and Split Mountain 2, which is right over here, they're going to have a meeting. So anybody here that might be a royalty owner or is interested in what we do, please show up. And I understand there's going to be free pizza. So, you know, I don't know how many pizzas you're buying, Craig, but, you know, you might need a bunch. All right, and last thing. If you've learned nothing else from me, all right, I want to teach you something right now. And I can't memorize this stupid monologue to save my life. But remember Cliff and Norm, right, from Cheers? Okay. This is Cliff. Well, Norm, it's like this. A herd of buffalo can only move as fast as the slowest buffalo. And when the herd is hunted, it's the slowest and weakest ones at the back that are killed first. This natural selection is good for the herd as a whole, because the general speed and health of the whole group keeps improving with the regular killing of the weakest members. In much the same way, the human brain can only operate as fast as the slowest brain cells. Now, we all know excessive intake of alcohol kills brain cells. But naturally, it attacks the slowest and weakest brain cells first. In this way, regular consumption of beer eliminates the weaker brain cells, making the brain a faster, more efficient machine. And that, Norm, is why you always feel smarter after a few beers. That's not the punchline. That's not the lesson. Remember my story about the bar in Houston? When that guy walked up and sat down, he should have noticed that I already had an adult beverage in front of me, so I was way smarter than him when he sat down. Thank you guys very much.